Okay.
Hello, I'm Nicholas Bunnin, and I'm here with Jana Rošker, talking about how we should, as philosophers, understand the importance and the driving importance in our current circumstances of discussing philosophy transculturally or interculturally, so that we can enrich our philosophical life in the first instance in extremely important ways, but then also aware in the world today, a world of uncertainty and conflict, where in the broader context of how we should live together and live ourselves, we can expand our horizons in a way that can bring understanding and stability in the wider culture, and perhaps even affecting international relations and the possibilities of restraining moves towards conflict, unnecessary moves towards conflict through ignorance. We are also contributors to a book, Doing Metaphysics in a Diverse World, how to make sense across cultures. And this book is published now and available. It's a large book with 16 authors. Jana and I are both contributing to this, but I think the other authors and the team as a whole, developing discussions over 5 years. Sorry for the interruption. Discussing these issues over 5 years through lockdown and recovery from lockdown. We know one another, all of us, very well through these discussions, mainly online, but which have led to deep friendships and mutual respect of people talking with different focused interventions about how to make sense of things and ourselves through doing metaphysics together.
Yeah, I was also, Nick, I was also very thrilled when I was invited. I think it was precisely you who invited me to join this group during the lockdown. And it was one of the very nice highlights of my time in the lockdown, because it was a continuous conversation for, I don't know, every 2 weeks with a bunch of very interesting philosophers, very interesting people. And for me, at least, it made this time during the lockdown pass a little bit quicker, and filled it with hope somehow. So, and we were, of course, starting to talk about intercultural philosophical research, or why is it important, in order to join this project of the book that was edited by Stephen Green. And you mentioned that it just came out. I didn't get the physical book yet, but I'm really, really looking forward to it, because it is one of the little but important projects in the intercultural philosophical exchange I was being part of during the last years. And I also, like yourself, I share your commitment, I share your idea of the importance of such intercultural philosophical dialogues in times of global crisis in which we live today, because all crises that we are facing now as humanities, not only the viral pandemics, but also severe military conflicts, ecological catastrophes, the unequal division of resources in the world, and so on. All these are interconnected crises that are global in nature and cannot be resolved anymore in the narrow confines of individual nation states, of course. And therefore, it is intercultural dialogues, especially in the fields of ethics and philosophy, are of course of utmost importance. They are more important than they were ever before, and this is also why people like you and myself really regard those questions to be relevant in today's world. And this is also why I'm increasingly, regarding myself, what I'm increasingly in my research work, in my thinking, I'm increasingly orientated towards seeking, seeking for new methods, for new ways of establishing this kind of dialogue, which must begin, of course, by learning how to listen to each other. And also, when I am an expert in Chinese philosophy, and also how to bring, non-Western philosophical traditions, especially ethical traditions, if we are talking about resolving crises, onto the global scale. So this is why these questions of transcultural philosophy, are increasingly important for myself. And I would like to know, Nick, when did you start to become interested in the issues of intercultural philosophy, also Chinese philosophy, of which you know a great deal, as I know, because I also highly respect you because of your expertise in this field?
Well, my interest began, I think, when I was an undergraduate and became a student of John Rawls, who both taught me and then supervised my undergraduate thesis. And I was particularly interested in problems of development, and also had some experience in doing field work in anthropology in a Harvard project in southern Mexico. So I was interested in the position of indigenous peoples who had cultures that in some cases long predated engagement with the West, and yet were treated badly by the rulers and elites in the countries in which they existed. I was also interested in Islamic society and the wonderful intellectual blooming in the Islamic world, reaching back to Greece, but with their own interpretations. And that set the basis for the medieval development of philosophy in Europe. I became interested in China because I fell in love. I met my wife in Oxford, and she was doing a second degree in Chinese studies. She's was from a Chinese family from the Chinese diaspora, who wanted to increase her own knowledge of China, not philosophical, but more literary and aesthetic knowledge. And because of that, I, first of all, was overwhelmed by herself and her brilliant family. And I decided that I would try to find out something about China and help to organize with a Chinese colleague a philosophy summer school in China, dealing with, involving teaching Western philosophy at a time of more openness after the Mao regime, to bring together something that had already happened early in the 20th century. And I thought I'd better learn something about Chinese philosophy as a high-grade amateur, because I don't have the language skills that Jana has. And when we started working together, I was amazed that over and over again, I had some inkling of something being important and jotted down some thoughts, and then discovered Jana had written books about the things, and with so much insight and so much engagement and enthusiasm of understanding that I feel myself under her shadow in these ways. But nevertheless, I think we can also just mention something of our own contributions to the book. And I'll mention in particular, I wrote two chapters on my own, but I want to talk about one chapter which with an expert in Islamic intellectual history and philosophy we wrote together, and we called it Naming Names, the Unnamed and the Unnameable, because so many of the contributions in the book as a whole in different cultural areas, looking specifically at different figures or traditions in comparison, that these were one of the themes that ran throughout the volume as a whole. But it's also very clear that we didn't have the idea of having one method, but exploring different methodological understandings of how to proceed as individuals, and also that we didn't want to have the idea of a matrix of comparing everything with everything. The sad fictional exemplar of this is Kosovan in George Eliot's Middlemarch, who is dry as dust and full of a lack of inspiration and insight. We wanted to do something else.
Yeah, and you did succeed in this regard, I must say. And when we are approaching towards the end of this conversation, because it is supposed to be short, but it is always so difficult, to interrupt a conversation with Nick, because he is so interesting. I will not tell you about what concretely my contribution in this interesting and important anthology was, because you have to read the book by yourself. I would just like to expose that I brought an example also of comparing two ideas to, on the first glimpse, very, very similar ideas that came to life in Chinese philosophy on the one side, and in the European tradition on the other hand. So, and I proceeded from the problem that one of the, or several problems that we are facing when seriously engaging with intercultural or transcultural philosophy, which is still dominated by relicts, at least, of Eurocentric methodologies, Eurocentric philosophical languages, and also Eurocentric valuation criteria. It is, of course, some people would think it is somehow ridiculous to speak about Eurocentrism in today's world, when we all know that how unimportant Europe or the European discourses are in today's geopolitical agenda, right? But of course, we all know that the prevalence of this Eurocentric criteria and Western values in philosophy goes back to the modernization, which spread through colonialization, not only the Western technology and the capitalist economic system, throughout the entire world, throughout many non-European regions, but also the Western axiology and methodology. So in order to surpass or resolve these problems that are still persisting, I was in the last years, I was developing a method which I call the method of intercultural philosophical sublation, although it has not much to do with Hegel, because Hegel's dialectics is based on the basic laws of European formal logic, but my dialectical method is based on classical Chinese dialectical methods of correlative complementarity. So I think that we have just described in a very few and short words what our contributions of the book are about, but I would really like to invite you to read the book. I will also introduce it in some of the upcoming international philosophical conferences I will be taking part of, and one of them I'm also hosting. But I hope that the book will have a good launch into today's world, because I think it is important. And Stephen Green, who has made this possible, has really made great work. So, yeah. Would you like to conclude with
Yes.
some concluding sentences, Nick,
Well,
before
yes,
we end?
very briefly, that our dialogue is on a website that celebrates the launching of the book at the British Academy, but also the launching of what we are calling Intercultural Philosophy Association, to move on from the book to a wider engagement with scholars and philosophers and people in the general public who might be interested in these matters. And we hope that some of you will be moved to look into the association, and we hope will join the association if you think it will be of importance to your own philosophical and broader thinking. But thank you for listening to us.
Thank you. I also hope that many scholars will join us in future. And in fact, I believe they will, because it is important. Thank you very much, Nick, for this nice conversation. And I'm sure we will continue it very soon again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.